So let me just speak from your heart for a second. Why the fuck am I still struggling? What am I missing? What am I doing wrong that this problem that I've been struggling with for so long is still virtually the same kind of problem? Why am I in the same place? Oof, I hear you. I really hear the frustration, the exasperation, the exhaustion, even the hopelessness that comes up. Why is it that you still chronically pick at your skin, pull at your hair, bite at your nails? Why is it when you understand everything so well, when you're trying to do all the things right, why is it that you're still so stuck? I'm going to tell you why in this episode. I'm going to tell you what the missing piece is and what you can do about it. You are listening to episode 103 of Beyond Skin Picking and Hair Pulling, a place where you can come to find answers that you have been seeking for a very, very long time. This is where we address the root cause of behaviors like chronic skin picking, hair pulling, and nail biting so that you can make long-term sustainable healing and change. My name is Raffaela Marie. I am your host. I struggled with chronic skin picking for 15 years myself, and I uncovered a holistic and science-based path to healing from it, and I share all of my knowledge with you on this podcast so that you can heal like I did. If you appreciate the work that I do, please hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment about how you feel about this episode, what came up for you. I love to hear from you. Here's what's going on. You've disconnected from your body and you've escaped to your mind, where there is logic and reason and learning and figuring things out. And it feels better to do that than to sit in the hurt, the anxiety, the hopelessness, the despair, the frustration, the feeling not good enough, the feeling like you're falling short, the feeling like you're failing. Being in your head at least makes you feel like you're doing something rather than just feeling stuck. And we escape from our bodies to our heads because in our body is where we feel emotion. And when we didn't learn how to feel that emotion properly, how to really process it, then we start to disconnect from the source of that pain, which is our body. And so that's why we can logically understand everything that's going on and still not see much change, still not see the change that we want to see. Because of course, understanding your past, understanding why you do the things that you do, your patterns, it is incredibly helpful to know that. And it's also only part of the journey. We disconnect from our body because of big things like physical and emotional abuse, but it's not just abuse. As Dr. Gabor Mate, a world-renowned physician and expert on trauma and addiction, has famously quoted, "Trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside you as a result of what happens to you." What this means is that it's not the event itself that creates all the trauma. It's being left alone with the emotional experience that event creates inside us. If you experience some big, difficult emotions as a child, and you didn't have help to process those difficult emotions, that gets stored as emotional pain. The problem is not that you had moments of being misunderstood as a child. The problem is that you were left alone in feeling misunderstood. No one helped you to process and understand that feeling and feel through it. So it doesn't have to be some traumatic event. It can just be moments of feeling unseen, of feeling misunderstood, of feeling alone. For example, if growing up, one of your siblings got way more attention than you did because they had a learning disability or behavioral issues, that would have hurt to not have as much attention. And we're talking about a child. You now have the power of logic. You can reason and say, yeah, my parents did the best they could. It was a hard situation. Totally. But you didn't understand that as a child. You just felt the pain of maybe not being seen, maybe not feeling as important. You didn't grasp the full situation. You couldn't. And that is an emotional experience that gets stored as pain. And the more moments of emotional pain that we experience alone, the more fragmented inside ourselves we become. We start to label parts of ourselves as good and bad. There's black and white. I'm allowed to feel this way, but I'm not allowed to feel this way. I'm allowed to be this version of me, but that version of me is not okay. That version of me is bad. This is a really simplistic way of making sense of your pain. And it's simplistic because you were a child when you tried to make sense of that pain that you didn't know how to navigate and you didn't have support in navigating and processing. And no child is going to blame their parents. Not truly, not deep down, because children are egocentric, which means that they believe the world revolves around them. That means that anything good that happens, anything bad that happens, it's because of them in some way. For example, I used to think that when we were driving in the car, every other car on the road driving in the same direction as us was going to the same place as us, because nothing else existed outside of my world. It didn't make sense. It was like, where else would they be going? Nothing exists outside of my world and what we're doing inside my world. And when it got pointed out to me, it was a weird moment. I remember thinking, that doesn't make any sense. Where would they possibly be going? Another experience we've all had is seeing a teacher outside of school. It is such a weird experience because in your world, that person only exists as your teacher. They don't exist as anything else outside of that. You don't have a concept of a world outside of your own yet. And so when something happens in your life that causes emotional pain, anxiety, distress, anger, feeling embarrassed, misunderstood, unheard, feeling judged, we try to make sense of it. And so we blame ourselves because we are the center of our own worlds. We don't understand that if someone else is upset, it isn't necessarily to do with me. We need someone to help us to understand that and process that. And so as children, the more difficult emotion that we are left alone with to process and figure out on our own, the more disconnected we become from our body, because a child cannot process emotion on their own unless they have been taught how to do that. And even then, they still need support of a regulated, grounded adult. Most of us didn't have that. And that's not to say that your parents are bad people. But ask yourself, how do your parents handle stress or overwhelm, anger? Did they show any of those feelings? Did they show when they weren't okay? Did they just explode in random moments? They don't know how to navigate their feelings either, so they couldn't help you either. And so we feel our emotions in our body. And when we get left alone with those feelings inside our body becomes a painful place to be, a confusing and scary place to be. And so we find ways to disconnect. We escape into our minds. We think and fantasize and create these worlds for ourselves. We find ways to just numb out and distract. Chronic skin picking and hair pulling and nail biting is a pretty effective way to do that, to help to distract us and soothe whatever is going on in our body that feels like it's too much, that we don't really understand. And then as you get older and you develop the power of logic, because logic develops around 7 or 8 years old, we start to be able to intellectualize, to figure things out, to problem solve. And we get really, really good at intellectualizing our emotions, our pain. But we're still not very good at feeling it. And that's where we get stuck. That's why we keep finding ourselves in the same situation, struggling with the same problem, even though we have spent so much time understanding what's going on. And the reason why we get so good at intellectualizing is that it actually does help. It feels good. I remember when I really started to connect the dots and I started to recognize like, oh, my parents have problems and it has nothing to do with me. It is healing on many levels to start to recognize everything that was going on, to broaden our understanding of our experiences, not just from our own little world that we had growing up, but expanding it to a broader understanding. And it only gets us so far until we start to feel stuck again. I mean, I spent so many years just figuring shit out, connecting dots, understanding. And I needed to do that. You need to do that as well. But where do we go from here? What do we do now that we have all this understanding, all this knowledge? What do we do with it so that we can actually start to move forward? And maybe you've picked up from what I've been saying, but the next step is learning how to reconnect with your body, understand your body, reconnect with all those emotions, all those parts of you that hurt so much. And there are quite a few different ways you can go about this. But I first want to say is that if you have never done this work before, if you have never had someone guide you through reconnecting to your body and processing emotion, you need to get help. You can't do this alone. The amount of times I have been an absolute mess and just broken down on sessions with my coach, it's hard, but it's deeply healing to have someone hold that space for you and to help you to process that intensity and come out the other side. To really, truly process and release that emotion that you never got to fully experience. And you cannot do that alone. So much of the pain that we carry was created in connection with another person. And so healing that pain must be done in connection with another person who you feel safe with, who can hold space for you. And this is not a friend or a loved one. Of course, having friends and loved ones who can really embrace you and support you, amazingly, amazingly helpful. I'm not dismissing that. But doing this really deeper work and processing the really raw stuff that is inside you, you need help with that. And so what I recommend is if you want to go down the path of therapists, psychologists, find someone who does inner child healing, parts work as well. And if you're looking for a coach, you can also contact me. You can just go to the show notes, click on send me a message. Send me a message about what inspired you to reach out. And working with me is a lot more affordable than you think. Now, some other things that can be really helpful, somatics. Somatics is essentially teaching you how to connect to your body. Breath work is a really powerful tool. Like I said, parts work, inner child healing. Parts work is internal family systems, IFS. Now, in saying that, if you would like insight in how to connect to your body, I do have 2 podcast episodes to recommend to you. The first one is episode 25 of this podcast, how to actually feel suppressed emotion. And the other is episode 36, feeling your feelings, are you doing it right? This will give you a better understanding of what it is to actually stop thinking so much and start to drop into your body and start to process what's there. This right here, this kind of work, learning to feel safe in my body again, learning to reconnect with my body and feel my feelings, learning how to sit with the intensity of them sometimes and process them, that has truly changed my life. Completely and utterly changed my life. Because the way we enjoy life is through feeling. And so if we are disconnecting from our emotions, we're disconnecting from the joy of life. We're disconnecting from experiencing life at its best. Because when you suppress one emotion, you suppress them all. And I've said this before in other episodes, but for a long time, moving to Switzerland, I could see what a gorgeous place I was in, and I felt nothing. I couldn't feel anything because I had disconnected so much from my body. It's scary to feel the pain. It's scary to reconnect, but your life will become so much more vibrant and enjoyable and real and raw and vivid. You're not broken. There's not anything fundamentally wrong with you. You just had to protect yourself. You did the best you could at that time. And now you get to show up for you and give yourself everything that you needed. Everything that you didn't get in the past. That's a really deeply beautiful and healing part of this work. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe, leave a comment about what came up for you. And of course, if you're looking for more support and you would like to explore working with me, go to the show notes and click on send me a message and tell me what inspired you to reach out. Have an absolutely beautiful rest of your day, and I'll see you next week for the next episode of Beyond Skin Picking and Hair Pulling.